Hello everyone, it's October 3rd and today I released Module 5 and I'd like to take some time kind of walking you through what I'm expecting from Module 5, or at least I hope, to see in our discussion threads. I've taken Module 5 and I've adapted a bit by bringing it current, if you will. As you know, we're studying ethics, we're studying a lot of theory, and in the theory, we understand that the cognitive, what's in the upper brain, are frameworks that require critical thinking. As many of you pointed out, what you got from last week's readings, the ability to experience something, interpret it, and analyze it. And as one of you pointed out, there's a feedback loop from the analysis back to the experience, and this is how we learn. Excellent point. So we're going to be studying three cognitive theories, if you will, that require brain power. In other words, ethical subjectivism, cultural relativism, and ethical egoism. Now, remember, there's a non-cognitive framework, if you will, that we use that falls under this very bizarre name for many of us who are accountants, this meta-ethical theory umbrella. The non-cognitive, some behavioral scientists would say, is the lower brain, okay? Your gut, your instinct. Doesn't require critical thinking. It's kind of the command center for your fight or flight. So typically what we're learning through many of our training, if you will, in government or in the public sector, your diversity, equity, inclusion training, you might see this, sexual harassment training, you might see this as well, is the ability to not instinctively go with the gut, to check your bias, to check yourself. And these are all good things to do, regardless of what situation you may find yourself in. Because I'm sure if you've lived long enough, you know that acting out of emotion, whether it's good emotion or bad emotion, is not the best thing. Really, we need to divorce our feelings from reality and what's best, looking at the specific situation and facts, and again, ignoring feelings. So I've uploaded 3 videos that I believe talk to each of these theories with current events. There's the one theory, well, let's talk about ethical subjectivism, or if we talk about ethical subjectivism, okay, the video that relates to that, I believe, will be evident to you because I'm trying to bring out in the Brett Favre video, did he operate, does it appear that he operated under an ethical subjectivism framework, or would you think it was more along the line of just being an egoist? Okay, could he, or could it be interpreted that, what he's doing here, is ethical in the subjective sense of that term, ethical subjectivism, okay? So, because in his mind, he probably doesn't think he did anything wrong. So you look at it from that point of view. Then the other 2 videos, you'll see one from Dr. Sunil Dan talking about censoring, if you will, through legislation. In California, there's a proposed bill that would require doctors or force doctors not to divulge certain types of information to their patients. Now you may say, what does that mean to me? What it means to you as an accountant, if there was a similar law passed for us accountants, it would basically be you are not permitted to discuss with your client, your employer, any non-GAAP accounting treatment, okay? So for example, what comes to my mind? The purchases method of inventory versus the consumption method, right? For example, let's say, the GAAP framework you're working with requires the consumption method to be used. Well, if this law were passed for us accountants, we would not be allowed to talk at all about the purchases method. Or if you're looking at, let's say, some type of costing situation, right? If it were considered, non-vogue or passé to talk about, I don't know, absorption costing, you'd be precluded from talking about absorption costing. So how does this affect the profession? How does it affect you? How does it affect client, practitioner privilege and confidentiality? So that video kind of brings out this issue of cultural relativism. If something isn't accepted by the culture or by the folks in mass, does that mean everything else can't be talked about, shouldn't be talked about? And if so, how do you critically think? Then the third video kind of borders a bit on, I think, ethical subjectivism and cultural relativism, because here you have an investigative reporter who in modern parlance has been canceled because she's not mainstream in her thinking. And it's really bizarre because we first saw the cancel culture, if you will, come against a certain demographic or certain, how should I frame it? Certain mindsets. But now we're seeing this cancel culture go way beyond, and it's kind of permeating to the point where you've got rappers or pop stars even pushing back on cancel cultures. Comedians like Dave Chappelle has been pushing back. Bill Maher, a social commentator, has been pushing back. So the question becomes, in this video with Katie Halper, has the employer acted, pursuant to this cultural relativism? Are they just trying to go with the flow, in other words? Or are they, practicing under a different framework? Are they being ethically subjective, okay, under that definition we have in BOSS? So take a look at those videos. Talk about them in your discussion threads. I'd like to see them discussed and what you think about them, because it's certainly permeating through society and it affects our ability to critically think. The other challenge I want to raise is this theory that BOSS has, that these are frameworks that have been rejected. Well, they've been rejected by the ivory tower academics, okay? Maybe up until recently. We don't know what current academics might be thinking, so we'll have to wait for BOSS's next edition or two to come out. But let's assume they've ruled these out, okay, as being impractical to use or not really reflective of the values that an ethical framework should espouse. Then why are they in practice? So I kind of just tease that out a bit. I mean, are they really rejected? Just because academics say they're rejected, and yet we look around and we see them in play. So the question is, if they should be rejected, right? Why aren't more academics or enlightened people pushing back and saying, for example, to the Brett Favres of the world, you're wrong, totally wrong in how your morality is structured, your thinking is structured, or going to Katie Halper's employer and saying, well, what are you doing here? you're using logic, let's say, that we've determined to be illogical or wrong. So I just kind of find that interesting. I'd like to know what you think about it. I'm still pondering, that question. Why, in fact, are these theories rejected, and we see them in play? And if they are rejected, why isn't there more of an outcry? Module 5, then, we also begin your plan exercises, and I ask you to discuss in 1.7 and 1.9 exercise and plan in your personal journals. How do you view justice? Let's do some soul searching here. What does justice mean to you? Okay? He gives you the questions, you answer those questions. Then we also look at virtue. What do you think virtue is? I'm not talking about perfection, that's a great quest, but some really, tangible ways for you to practice virtue. I mean, as a human being, I, like you, get tempted to do certain things that are probably not right. So I need virtue in those areas. Maybe I need greater patience with my spouse or with my students. Maybe I need forbearance to not be a glutton when it comes to certain food that I like, or, whatever my lusts may be. You can imagine what those are for yourself. So talk about those, and remember, if you feel uncomfortable with anything, please, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. Go back and reread your post, and you can edit things out. Some students get very personal, and that's fine, because, believe me, with the exception of me maybe sharing a story, your name, because I'll forget it anyway, and the association to the event, if it were to prove, academically important for another class, I would never make that association, never do that to you. So anyway, think about what we're talking about here, this meta-ethical theory, cognitive versus non-cognitive, and those theories that have been dismissed versus those that haven't been dismissed. Think about censorship, now that it seems to be spreading to all camps, all thought, and how that affects your ability to critically think. Okay, and what does that mean for you as a critical thinker going forward? Think about restrictions, such as the proposed bill in Florida, in California rather. How could that affect you as a practitioner? Would you be bothered by it? Would you be bothered if you were not allowed to talk about non-GAAP application of certain economic transactions? Would you be bothered by the fact that you couldn't show maybe a 2-step financial statement, and it's got to be a 4 or 5-step financial statement, such as an income statement, right? Broken down into the different categories. How would you feel as a consultant if you were able to discuss certain matters? It's kind of chilling. For me, it's chilling. Some of you might say, who cares? I don't know. We're all different that way. But anyway, any questions? Remember, the best place to call me is on my cell phone, 703-309-4461 if you have any questions. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you're very busy working on many other classes, I'm sure. But put into this class, okay? And you're going to get a lot out of it. All right? If you have any questions about your discussion threads, remember, I will take points off if I don't see engagement with other posts. Some of you that like to lead us off, that's fine. You can lead us off if you want to be the first poster. But remember, if I or someone else raise a question, you've taken the leadership position to be number one, right? You got to get that ball rolling. And if you don't let it roll, if you don't make it roll, I kind of look at that and say, what's going on? If you want to be number one out there. Also, for those of you that come in real late, understand that I'm going to expect you to have read all of the prior posts and look for some threads, okay? So you could lose points there. Also, not engaging with other students' remarks, you could lose points. Overall, I'm really happy with the discussion threads. You're wonderfully civil with one another, even when you disagree. You're doing a great job. Actually, I'm really, really charged up about your discussion threads. It's making me want to read them, okay? But anyway, thank you again. I'm sorry to bother you so much with these videos, but I just want to reach out and touch you, and I can't. So this is the only way I can do it, okay? So be cool. I know you will, because the weather's changing. And if you have any questions, give me a buzz. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.